when you say this is the beginning of a relationship, I don't have to sleep with you, do I?
I thought we already did.
So how cold it gets.
You know what?
Did you go to the PDD?
I don't want to bring up that night again. So,
He did.
um,
Too soon? No.
I thought I had forgotten about that.
Yeah, no.
All right, hey, hi everybody. I did 21 years in the Navy with the SEAL teams, and you know, I got to learn a lot. Obviously, I taught survival for a period of time. I also taught marksmanship for a period of time. And then I got in the civilian world and I met a lot of people who would say to me, man, I wish I knew how to do that, or I have a gun, but I'm afraid of it, or I have a gun, and they would tell me, and I'd say, oh, well, where do you keep it? Well, I keep it in my drawer. Do you keep it loaded? Oh, absolutely not. Why would I do that? And I was like, well, you might as well put a rock in your drawer. So just a mindset of readiness, trying to take some of the skills that I was able to learn, that many of us learn, and approach it and give it to the civilian world, because I mean the reality is it is a dangerous world we live in. You know, you hope and pray for peace, but a mindset and readiness for war is a good mindset, I will say. You hope that you never need those skills. I pray I never need those skills again. I hope we can live in peace, and my kids and grandkids get to grow up and live in peace, and we'll all work for that. But I think the saying goes, I'd rather be a warrior and a gardener, a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. So this is why we do this course. You know, you're not going to walk away and be John Wick or James Bond or anybody like that. But I will give you some basic skills. Let me rephrase that. We will give you some amazing basic skills that hopefully will give you a little more confidence and a mindset of readiness that, God forbid, anything happen. So does that sound all right? Obviously, some of you have been through this before, so that just goes to show you what terrible instructors we are. They got to come back again and again just because they can't get it because of our poor teaching style. So, so tonight we're going to go roughly about 3 hours. I'm going to go 2 hours, give or take, going over gear and talking about survival in your workbook. This will all travel along. And each one of you, at the end, I'm going to go over, this is all my gear. Please understand, this is a lot of gear. I have accumulated a lot of gear over a 20-plus year special operations career, and then 10 years being in the civilian world, and then getting into teaching and all this. So don't look at all this and be like, oh my God, I got to go buy all this stuff. I mean, this is probably $20,000 worth of gear in these go bags. But I do give you an inventory and some place to start. And we'll talk about that, and we'll go through all those things. So you also got the Oakley bag. So, and this is a good size for what I would call a 3-day pack or a 72-hour go bag. And we're going to go over that tonight. And I would recommend, if you don't have a 72-hour go bag, I hope after this course is done, you will at least build that. And if you have at least that basic thing, it's just a mindset of readiness and something to think about on how to survive for a short period of time if things went sideways. So this is a big question I always ask people: will you be ready? And what do people often think when they hear that question?
Ready for what?
Ready for what? That's what most people ask. Ready for what? And I think that's the reality. We don't really know. So you kind of got to be a little bit ready for anything. I'm not a prepper. There are individuals, if you go online, you can go deep into rabbit holes. Preppers are individuals who believe that, you know, someday society will totally collapse and they intend to live on their own. Some of them go as deep as they've built bunkers and they have years and years of food and stuff like that. I'm kind of the mindset, be ready, a low to mid-level of readiness for almost anything will carry you a long way. And then from there, we can adapt as the world moves forward. Because the reality is you can spend a lot of preppers, in my opinion, spend 90% of their time for a less than 5% or maybe even 2% chance of a total collapse of all society where that's the way we're living. I think that's unlikely. You know, if it happens, then they'll say, Jay Redman, you're wrong, and that's okay. I'll adapt. But at the end of the day, it comes down to that mindset of readiness. And everything that we're going to do in this course, from tonight being about survival to tomorrow it's going to be medical. A lot of people have no medical skills, and they'll think that somebody will come save you. The reality is that may or may not be true. And then, of course, Alan will teach it with the situational awareness and the self-defense class, and then on Sunday we'll be out at the range. So tonight we're going to go over the intro to survival. One of the things I frequently talk about is an overcome mindset. Anybody want to give me a go at what they think someone who has not been in the course before? I see you cheaters. I saw Chris was like, I know what it is. And you've been through this course like 27 times. Anybody ideas on what is an overcome mindset?
Never stop.
Never stop. I like that.
Manage fear, anxiety, all those negative emotions that will stop you from.
I love that. That's a great, that's probably one of the biggest things in overcome mindset. How do we overcome ourselves, our own fear, insecurity, anxiety? Anybody else?
Stay positive.
Staying positive. It's a good thing in the moment, especially if we're overcome by events. It's easy to get really negative. I could definitely see people when things start to fall apart, they drift into this negative thought pattern, which is always dangerous, you know. So I talk about the overcome mindset as broken into 3 components. Number 1 is a level of awareness. There has to be a level of awareness that bad things are going to happen to good people. There's a lot of people who are very idealistic, and they look around the world, and when they see bad things happen, you know, it's always to somebody else, and the thought never enters their mind like that could happen to me. And that's a really dangerous way to live your life, because the reality is you're going to be so unprepared when, God forbid, that happens to you. So part of an overcome mindset, in my opinion, is awareness that things can happen. You could be afflicted with a life-threatening disease. You could be carjacked. You could be attacked, sexually assaulted. Any of these things could happen to us. I mean, there are a lot of men that are like, that'll never happen to me, until it happens to you. So the reality is, having a mindset of, God forbid, these things could happen, I need to have an awareness. Number 2, that allows us now, once we're aware and we accept that these bad things can happen, now we start to build a mindset of preparation. You guys have already committed to that being in this course. And we're going to try and provide you the tools so that you can at least build that basic level of preparation. Preparation goes from the extreme end of the spectrum. Sifu Alan Baker, 96 years training in martial arts. He came out of the womb with a katana and a knife. God bless your mother. No, but Alan has trained the majority of his life. He doesn't like to brag, so I always brag for him. Alan holds 25 black belts in various martial arts. He has obviously awareness and is prepared to some of the highest levels for these situations. For us, that can be, you know, like martial arts, it can be weapons training, it can be preparing, building out things to, you know, survival kits and things like that. And sometimes it's mental. It's a mental preparation. You know, like, this bad thing can happen, so at least I've prepared myself that, God forbid, when it does, I don't freeze. I know I'll give an example. How many of you have kids, and how about teenage kids? How many of you have had your kids drive, that went through the process of driving? How terrifying is that when you first send your kid out onto the road, you know?
I was on my knees most of the time.
Yeah. I mean, and every day across this country, teenage kids are killed in auto accidents.
Yeah.
And if you honestly think, well, that'll never happen to my kid, I hate to tell you, you're living in la la land. So I remember when we went through that, I had that awareness and I mentally prepared myself. God forbid I got that call. And there are times I'd get late night calls where I was afraid, but I knew, like, all right, let's go. Whatever's going to happen, I'm ready. I'm mentally prepared, which leads us to the last step, action. Action is our ability to drive forward. You can't create an overcome mindset. It takes these steps to create an overcome mindset. You can't go from a lack of awareness and no preparation to suddenly be able to function and take action. It's just the human body doesn't work that way. There has to be some level of awareness with mental preparation in order to do this. So this is the overcome mindset. That's what we're hoping to accomplish today and throughout this course. So anybody know the rules of threes when it comes to survival?
The 3 is 2.
So if you it's a rule of threes. How about this? Yeah, you can survive roughly 3 minutes without air. So give or take, you can survive about 3 days without water, and you can survive about 3 weeks without food. You definitely would be very uncomfortable in these situations. If I suddenly started choking you out at about a minute and a half, you'd be pretty unhappy. Same thing with after about 2 days without water, you'd be pretty unhappy and pretty uncomfortable. And after about a week without food, you'd be pretty uncomfortable. I'll tell you, I went through a survival course in Panama, and on day 3 without food, I was pretty unhappy. So it definitely. So these are things to think about as you're out there. Here's my order of survival. Some people may have different thoughts on this. But first and foremost, if you're thinking about surviving, water is going to be one of the most critical things you're going to need. I mean, we already know you can only survive a few days without it. And as you start dehydrating, it starts impacting everything. Your ability to think, your ability to function. And most people wait too long. They wait till they're actually thirsty in a survival situation before they start looking for water. So it should be one of your first thoughts if you're in a survival situation like, hey, I need water, where should I be looking for this? And we're going to talk about some of those things. From there, it's warmth or shelter. This could invert if you are in obviously, sub-zero temperatures. In this case, your warmth would become priority and then water would become secondary. But most of the time, I would say that if you're not in an extreme situation where your heat or cold risks, like maybe 120 degree desert conditions or negative 30 or below winter conditions, water would become first. From there, then it becomes food and defense and protection. I put this as a asterisk because this could fall anywhere into this equation as to reality. So hopefully that is not something that is first and foremost. Hopefully if you're in a survival situation, you're not having to also worry about defense and protection. But it is always something that you should be thinking about. So, general readiness. This is stuff that I recommend that everyone has in their house. We should always be ready. When we think about things that could occur, I would say that at the lowest level, a storm. I mean, think about the people in North Carolina. I mean, how many of them thought that there would be a once in a generation, or actually once in several generations, hurricane that was going to sweep through and devastate that community? How many of them were actually ready for that? So I tell people, like, these are all the things you should have in your house no matter what on a regular basis. Because most of the time, most people, when a storm's coming in, that's when they rush out and they try and replenish themselves. And of course, now you're fighting against everybody else who's out there trying to do the same thing. If you maintain all this stuff all the time, you don't have to worry about that. And then you're not caught off guard. Awareness, preparation, the action is in place once it already has occurred. So one of the things is I recommend at least 6 gallons of water. You can buy jugs of water, just regular Deer Park. I don't get into the nuances. People want to write me and say, oh, if it's in a plastic container, it's bad for you. Okay, yeah, you may be right. But I read up on this after several people wrote me. Everybody's got an opinion. But this will last about 2 years before any of the plastic starts to break down or anything like that. So that's why I date my water jugs. You know, I would grab them, stick them on the shelf, and I would date them. Warmth, blankets, sleeping bag, fire starter materials. These are things that you have in your house. In my garage, once again, you don't have to have these sexy bags that the military issued me. But this is we used to call these coffin bags. But these I have set in the garage. The kids know, they've been briefed, like, hey, if anything ever happened, you know, we're going to grab these bags. These are going to get loaded. Or if these are full, everyone has a sleeping bag in this bag and some extra clothes and stuff. So if we needed to blow out, or, you know, if there was a storm and we didn't, you know, whatever, we have the ability to stay warm. Fire starter materials in your house, I recommend having those things. So having lighters and things like that. Believe it or not, I did quite a bit of research. Would you believe that the best lighter out there by survivalists is this lighter right here? Bic lighter. There's all kinds of storm lighters and kung fu lighters and blowtorch lighters and all this different stuff. But this lighter, there were some survivalists that did tests. They buried it in dirt. They stuck it in the bottom of a bucket of water. And for the most part, after they dried it out, it still worked. The other good news about this lighter, you can fly with it. I have one of these in my go bag. I take it everywhere I go. When I ski, I have one in my pocket because it works and you don't have to worry about that. I do have a torch lighter. I am a fan. The torch lighters are nice, but if it goes out or if you lose your butane, your torch lighter's no good. So, and this was one of the other, I found this on Amazon. It wasn't very much. You don't need to pay for these $50 storm lighters, you know, things like that. You're wasting your money. Food. I recommend, I am a big fan. They make all kinds of different food that you can have. I mean, you can get MREs. You could order MREs. The only problem with MREs, they have a little bit less of a shelf life. I think it may be about 10 years or so. Some of these other ones. So I'm a big fan of My Patriot Supply. Actually, full transparency, I have a deal with them. You can go to Ready with Red and you can get some of their meals. But they last 25 years. So this is one of their 3-month food supplies. You can purchase this. And it's freeze-dried meals, so all you need to do is add water. If you have no power, you have the ability to just boil some water, you add it. And tonight, you guys can try some. It's actually not too bad. I've had some people say, oh, you know, you'll die if you eat that all the time. Well, yeah, I agree. You shouldn't eat it all the time. But for short term, you know, I mean, in the military, I ate these things for several weeks at times, and I was perfectly fine. I survived. So, but there's all kinds of different ones. These are a little higher quality, in my opinion. My Patriot it's more in bulk because it's designed to have, like, I actually have 6 months of food at home. That I can load out and take with me if I need it. These are a little tastier, so a little more short term. This will serve about 2 people. I also have different water jugs. These are, Domatech makes these. You can get these at REI. These are really nice for filling. We're going to talk about water pumps and things like that in a minute. But so I recommend having some of that. I keep this stuff in my garage. I'll be honest, when we've had big storms and things like that where we had no power, the kids thought it was really fun when we'd bust out some of that food. And it's a good chance to test out your stuff in a benign, easy situation. I am a fan of ways to cook. I actually replaced my electric stove with a gas stove. And the reason I did it is, 1, I like gas better to cook. And 2, even if I don't have power, I can use my gas stove. So something to think about. We also have a fire pit in the back. I could cook off that if I need to. Just things to think about ahead of time, like, you know. Jet boils are there's a lot of different camping stoves out there. Jet boil is really designed, their main function is to boil water very quickly. That's why it's called a jet boil. And it'll boil water in about a minute. So it gives you the ability for any of these freeze-dried meals or anything that you're doing to quickly boil water. You don't want to use these inside an enclosed space. You want to make sure there's ventilation, but they work great. I have these. I have one of these in my car. I have my long-term bag, short-term bag. We'll go over that in a minute. I'm a big coffee snob, so coffee is a big thing for me. In my go bags, I have coffee. And this jet boil actually is designed to be a coffee press. I have a coffee press inside there.
Hey, quick question for you, because I do have some of the different buckets from different brands. Why does it seem like if it's like a 3 months, whatever, that there is typically higher in carbohydrates, like the macaroni and cheese and oatmeal, opposed to maybe adding some protein in it, like whether it's a vegetarian type protein or not?
Yeah, some of them, I know my Patriot Supply has some higher protein ones. Yeah, I agree. I think because it's cheaper, to be perfectly honest. Protein, the carbs are going to be your energy source. I would definitely, I mean, if I was out, depending on where I was, I would definitely be trying to hunt and kill something for meat. But they make them with the protein included, and I would recommend getting some of those. So, good question. And then they also make some of the camping stoves if you're interested in one of those. Definitely have some light, different flashlights. I mean, there's tons of different flashlights. I'm a big fan of headlamps. If you are not familiar with headlamps, these things work great. I used them all through my military career. We have them in our drawers in our house. That way, if there's a loss of power, you can just throw it on, and now you're able to roll around with your headlamp and be able to see and do things. I have multiple tactical flashlights for greater illume. They make different lanterns. This one's pretty nice. It's pretty bright and it's really light, and it's also waterproof, so if it fell in the water, it won't sink. So a lot of different things. In my emergency kit, I also have some strobes, so that that's on my gear actually. But I have a strobe on my gear. So something else to think about is if you're in a survival situation, signaling. You know, if you're not trying to evade the enemy like we were, and now you're just in a survival situation, your ability to signal is something to think about. Communications, emergency radio. So I definitely recommend, if you don't have one, have an emergency radio that you can tune in to different emergency bands. You can turn into the local AM radio and things like that, so you can get updates on what's going on. Weather band radio to hear what's going on. You'll need that. If there's no power, your electronics may or may not work. Marine band radio, I have one of those. We're going to talk a little more about communications here in a bit. Power and chargers. So if you don't have some solar chargers, I'd recommend getting one. I have these for both my go bags, and they make some larger ones. My Patriot actually makes a big one, and I just got into a new agreement with them where they're going to start sending me more gear, and I'm going to be doing testing and putting those videos out, so I'll be able to tell you guys what's good and what's not. But definitely we live in a digital world, so definitely having the ability to charge your things. And if we don't have power, then obviously solar is the next best thing. Generators. I have a generator that's in the garage. It's kind of a smaller Honda generator. It gives me the ability that I can power my fridge and a couple of those things. Just recognize the dangers with generators. People kill themselves in storms all the time because they put it inside their house. And of course carbon monoxide, or even in their garage, and they'll crack the garage in the cold weather, not recognizing that there's a buildup of carbon monoxide. And then fuel, I am a huge fan. I tried to always teach my kids this, and my wife just thinks it's my job, which, God, I love her, because I've just accepted it is my job to always make sure the car is full. And I'll get in her car and it'll be empty. And she'll say, I did that for you. Thank you, babe. So I am a big fan of if the car is less than half, it should be full. Like you should just get in a mindset of keeping your car full at all times. Reason being, you never know when something's going to happen. My plan is, God forbid something happens, I'm going to drive away. I want to get out of this, and I want to be. I need to make that decision, and we're going to talk about that here in a few minutes. Egress plans and decision plans and things like that. But if the world is collapsing, or there's a reason, there's a big storm, or any of this, the last thing you want to do is want to be filling your car up, because what always happens? Everybody else is doing the same thing, and now you're sitting in line. I know here on the East Coast a few years ago we had I forget, it's something on the East Coast, a line busted.
No, it was a virus that shut down the pumping stations coming out from down south.
Yeah.
Because I ran into the same problem. I got below, and I drive a lot.
Yeah.
So I was like searching for gas stations.
It was backed up all over the place here, man.
Yeah, they
Everybody
were
was
out.
trying to get gas and couldn't. And I had full tanks, and I was like, meh. I also have, yeah, go ahead, Chris.
So, 4 years ago, I lived in a city it's on an isthmus, so got lake on two sides, and there's one way in and one way out. And we had a snowstorm that dumped about 24 inches of snow in about 10 hours, and the isthmus was completely shut down, and people were stranded there for 5 days. And couldn't get them in, couldn't get them out, and I can't remember how many people died, but it was from exposure.
Yeah. Texas, several years ago, Dallas had that massive freeze that I actually got called and asked to do an interview because of survival for that. So yeah, being prepared for those things ahead of time is what's going to make the difference. I'm telling you right now. Have your car always full. I have a large, it's like a 30-gallon gas tank on wheels that I keep full. You definitely want to add some ethanol reducer. I can't remember what the name of that stuff is. Yeah, yep, the stabilizer. You definitely want to add that to your gas, and that's part of my blowout plan. If we're blowing out, I already know I got a full tank. I strap that to the roof so I can use gravity to fuel the car on the road. And man, I can go probably 500 miles with that to get out.
Get that on your roof.
Small but mighty, bro. Small but mighty. All right, general readiness. Let's talk about in your car.